Updated, my 36M wife, 36F, is accusing me of trying to emotionally steal my son, 12M, from her. Please help. Original post, I have been married to my wife for 15 years now. We married in our senior year of college. Upon graduation, she worked for 3 years to help pay for our finances while I was in law school. During my last year of law school, my wife got pregnant with our son, Zane. After his birth and my graduation, I found work at a big firm out in NYC. I began making a good 6 figures, and my wife asked if she could become a stay-at-home mom to help raise our son. I agreed with her and told her I would cover the house finances. We've never had any issues with this. True, I would work long hours, but she understood. The house would always be clean, and there was always food ready when I got home. It was a great dynamic. The only issue was that I rarely saw my kid. Zane was usually asleep by the time I got home because I would get home late. Zane and his mom are close because they spend a lot of time together. Fast forward to 2020 and COVID hits. During COVID, firms, including the one I worked at, moved to remote work. I was happy I could work from home and spend more time with my wife and kid. Zane loved it. He would bring his Legos and toys into my room and sit on the floor and play near me. We could talk and have a good time. At the beginning, my wife was happy about it. She liked seeing us together and she would join in the room too. Me doing my work and them hanging around. However, if everything stayed great, I wouldn't be writing this. It's been 3 years since 2020 and my firm still allows remote work, so I still take advantage of it. Zane still comes in to play on his Switch or iPad and even do his schoolwork in there while I work. My wife doesn't join us anymore. She just sits in the other room watching TV. So a few nights ago, I asked her if everything was okay, and she got loud and mad, which she has never done before. She began accusing me of stealing Zane from her. How it used to be the two of them laughing and having a fun time. But now all he wants to do is stay near my office, or in my office. I was shocked. I told my wife that he is my kid too, and that with me here, we can all spend time together, unlike how we couldn't before. She said I was trying to emotionally steal her son from her. I reminded her that he was my son too, and I deserved to be around him as much as she did. My wife began crying and packed an overnight bag and decided to go stay with her sister. I was left dumbfounded at how south everything had gone in this conversation. It's been 3 days since she left and her texts have basically been dry and basically asking me to go back to working on site in my firm. I don't want to have to do this as I'd much rather work from home closer to my family. I've spoken with her sister, and she says that she sees no issue in what I'm doing and said she will try to reason with my wife. I told one of my friends, and he asked if it was possible that Zane wasn't my kid and my wife was feeling guilt seeing us together. I told him that wasn't possible, not only because my wife has never shown any signs of being unfaithful even while dating, but we did a paternity test for safe measures. That was the lawyer part of me that wanted it. We also have security cameras in and around the house due to 2 security incidents a few years ago. My wife never leaves without texting me, and nothing is off at home. We also share each other's locations on iPhone, so I doubt there's an affair being covered up. He also still spends a lot of time with her and likes to go with her when they go out. Zane is wondering where mom is, and I am left really confused. Has anyone ever dealt with this before? Any thoughts on what I should do? Now for the update, good update. I went to speak with my wife the night I made this post. I went over to her sister's house to try and understand why she said what she said. Upon seeing me, she immediately began crying and asking me to forgive her, and that she was sorry that she said what she said. Apparently, she had talked with her sister, and her sister tried explaining to her that our son was growing up and becoming more independent. The majority of the comments on the original post were right. She had been a SAHM for the past 12 years, but now that our son was exploring his independence, she didn't know what to do and felt lost. I asked her what caused the big blow-up, and she said that our son had told her that he wanted to stop doing the weekly baking Saturdays with her, as he wanted to instead start watching college football with me. His school is also asking them to explore their extracurriculars for next year, and my wife wanted him to do a cooking extracurricular that the school provides. He told her he didn't want to do that and wanted to start playing football. Important to note that in my office that I said my son spends a lot of time in, there is a lot of my football memorabilia. I played in high school, as did my brother and my father. Now I had a few trophies and a state championship ring that Zane liked to hold and look at. No, I didn't play in college. I was a backup on the team. Basically, what did it for her was that Zane started to ignore all the old hobbies they did together and wanted to align himself with my interests. She felt the connection between them weakening. She was in tears the entire time she was speaking. I listened to her and understood where she was coming from. It can't be easy to have your identity be attached to one thing and then have that one thing change. I asked her why she was gone for 3 days. She said that she didn't mean to be gone for this long, but that when her sister mentioned she put all her identity into our son, she thought it would be a good idea to be away for a few days and give herself some separation. I told her that he will always be her son and that she will always hold a special place in her heart, that no matter how old he gets or how his interests change, he will always need his mom. He's just changing, and part of our jobs as parents is to embrace that change and support him. She came home with me that night. She hugged Zane and cried, telling him that she was sorry for leaving. I took your advice and suggested family counseling, marriage counseling, or individual therapy. She said she would like to put off the first two for now, but did ask for help finding a therapist for her, so that should help. I suggested her getting a job or something that she can do so that her entire identity isn't being a mom. She said she doesn't like her college degree, so I told her to back to school if she wants, and I'll foot the bill. She is planning on doing culinary school and wants to open a YouTube cooking channel, and I told her I am behind her 100%. She also wanted to start working at her friend's bakery, so she will be starting there next month. I also suggested group family time so that the three of us do more family activities. I'm also asking Zane if he would want to do designated mom time and designated dad time. He can do activities with his mom, and I can do activities with him. He asked me to help him practice football, so I'm thrilled to do that with him. We also decided that mom and dad need to have their alone time, so he is going to get more free time to himself. The past 2 nights have been great, and I'm happy seeing my wife happy and back home with us. Thank you guys for all your support and comments. Story 2. Am I in the wrong for telling my ex-husband that our kids are justified in feeling like they don't have a father? Original post. I'm 33 and have 2 kids, 12 and 8. I divorced their dad when I discovered he was cheating on me with a mom from our younger son's school group. Despite that betrayal, I agreed to shared custody because I wanted my kids to grow up with their father in their lives. However, since the divorce, he's only been around when he's picking them up for visits. He often goes out with his stepchildren, but rarely includes our kids, claiming those outings are spur of the moment and can't always include them. Eventually, I stopped pushing, but I've always thought it was unfair that he keeps his distance from our children's lives. Recently, I decided to upgrade my older son's computer, and he asked if we could give his old one to his cousin, my brother's son. My brother has been a huge support for my kids. He's always available to take them to their school events when I can't, and often takes them out to the park or for trips when I'm busy. My ex, on the other hand, is rarely available for them. Anytime I ask him to help with an activity, he has an excuse. He's out of town or swamped with work. Ironically, though, whenever his stepkids need something, he's there. Once, he even argued with the stepkid's father at a school event, insisting he had the right to be there. When my ex found out I gave the computer to my nephew, he got upset. He complained that if I had money to spare on a gift like that, I should have forgiven 2 months of child support he'd missed, since his finances were tight with a new baby. He added that if I could give away a computer, I should have gifted it to either his kids or his stepkids, who share just one computer among the 3 of them. I told him my finances were none of his business and that I owed nothing to his stepchildren. Then his wife jumped into the conversation, accusing me of spoiling my son by giving him a new computer and of being petty for letting my son bring it to their house, claiming it was just to show off in front of his step-siblings. I told her she had no right to speak to me that way or question my decisions. I added that I allow my kids to see their father so they can grow up with him in their lives, not so she can interfere with how I parent. My ex was offended, but I told him this whole situation could have been avoided if his wife hadn't inserted herself where she doesn't belong. After that, things seemed to calm down until last week. I went to pick up the kids and my ex was visibly upset. He explained that he'd tried reading a bedtime story to our youngest. At home, he still likes to be read to before bed, usually by me, his brother, or my brother, and when none of us are around, he listens to audiobooks. Apparently, my ex wanted to make an effort to connect, so he offered to read to him. But our son turned him down, saying he didn't need him for that because he could do it himself. My ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 8-year-olds without a dad on his tablet, and it hit him hard. The next day, my ex offered to take our older son to basketball practice, but he replied that he'd be going with his dad. He quickly corrected himself and said, "Uncle." That made my ex even angrier, and when I came to pick up the kids, he confronted me about it. I told him that if our kids feel like they don't have a father, he has only himself to blame. He tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was the one pushing him away from his role. I told him it's up to him to show up for his kids, not something I can do for him. I reminded him he was the one who broke our family, and he's chosen to be more involved with his stepkids than with his own children. I told him not to kid himself. The kids are growing up, and they're starting to see the reality of who he is as a father. If he keeps this up, he can't expect much from them in the future. After that exchange, his mom called me. While she's always been polite to me, I felt the need to say that I would have appreciated this same concern from her when she supported her son's affair, knowing her grandchildren were losing their father in the process. She hung up, and we haven't spoken since. My brother advised me that I had every right to express how I feel, but he suggested that maybe this discussion shouldn't have happened in front of the kids. Later, my ex texted me saying that if I weren't so difficult, he'd spend more time with them. I told him his duty as a father doesn't depend on whether I'm easy or not, and he knows I've never prevented him from seeing the kids. The truth is, when he has to choose, he prefers outings with his stepkids over his own children, and that's something only he can change. Now for the updates. Update 1. These past days have been a bit unusual. First, I want to thank all of you. I didn't expect to receive so much advice, and I never thought this app would be so useful. It's not very popular in my country. Now back to the topic. My ex sent me messages saying he wanted to resolve things, stop arguing, and talk to me. I agreed. He came to my house, and we didn't beat around the bush, we went straight to the point. He asked me if I really thought he was a bad father. I replied that, looking back now, I never would have chosen him to be the father of my children. He said it wasn't easy for him, and I answered that it wasn't easy for me either because I take on both his role and mine. He told me he couldn't leave his stepchildren without a father because he had already broken their family, and I replied that he had left his own children without a father. He started crying and told me it was my fault, saying that when the infidelity happened, I refused to forgive him or go to couples therapy. I kept telling him things I'll admit they weren't kind, but none of them were lies. He asked me if, given his current state, I didn't feel sorry for him, and I said no. He told me he didn't think I could be so cruel, and I replied that when I changed jobs, pulled my kids out of school 2 months before the end of the term, moved houses, and watched him disappoint our kids over and over again, any empathy I might have felt turned into apathy. He left after that. His mother called me and said she knew what I had told her son, that he hadn't stopped crying, and that she didn't understand how I could carry so much hatred to hurt her son like that. She said I should just get over it. I answered, with all due respect, what I said wasn't out of hatred, but out of truth. If your son is crying, it's because he's finally facing the consequences of his actions. Maybe instead of worrying about how he feels now, you should have taught him to take responsibility and treat people with respect. She said I didn't know what it was like to feel a mother's love and see a child suffer, and I replied that I did understand because I have 2 children who cry over a living father. 2 children who see their dad being a father to other kids when he doesn't have time to be their father. She said he was sorry, and I told her not to put words in his mouth and to stop calling me about anything related to her son. I hung up. I wanted to cry so badly, but I'm a damned mother, and I don't have time for that. I want my kids to feel safe, loved, and strong enough not to need anyone, not even me, to be themselves. Last Thursday, I took my kids to their cousin's birthday party, hosted by my ex-sister-in-law. I still have a good relationship with her. She was the one who told me about the infidelity and that her mother was already encouraging it. My ex showed up alone and irritated. My kids kept their distance from him. They kissed his hand but then ignored him completely. My ex-mother-in-law told the kids they should show more respect to their father, and my eldest replied that he doesn't show respect for me since he and his partner talk badly about me. I scolded my son, not for what he said, but for how he addressed his grandmother. I told him it was wrong to eavesdrop on private conversations and repeat them. Then I asked him to gather his things because we were leaving. My ex-mother-in-law asked me not to leave, saying the kids were having fun and we could resolve this as adults. She asked my ex what he had said, and he claimed not to remember. I told her I didn't care, and she said we should be good parents. I replied that to be good parents, you need to be good people first. My ex was getting agitated. My ex-mother-in-law asked why we couldn't have a civilized co-parenting relationship. I told her everything I've mentioned here about his free will to see the kids and how the second custody agreement isn't working since he only sees them some weekends. My ex didn't want to discuss it, saying he had too many kids at home. My ex-mother-in-law told him the only kids who should feel comfortable are his, and the comfort of the others should be provided by their biological father. My ex wanted to end the conversation because his mother was scolding him for being a careless father. He also said it was my fault. I asked him to clarify how it was my fault. You can see the kids whenever you want. What more do you want? He started yelling, claiming I was only being petty because I didn't really need the money since I earned more than him and had fewer kids to feed. I told him I wouldn't continue the conversation and that I'd show him what being uncivilized looks like by filing for the overdue child support payments. His mother asked what I meant by overdue payments. I explained that he was 3 months behind. She was furious, slapped him, and demanded to know what he had done with the money for his children. He answered, I couldn't let JR miss out on attending the same school as my son. I didn't want him to feel inferior. My ex-mother-in-law said she couldn't believe it, and they started arguing. I left. Yet for context, my youngest son attends a private school, and my ex pays for his stepson to attend the same school. Yesterday, my ex-mother-in-law came over and said she would pay the overdue fees. She brought the money in cash. I knew my ex would be furious. Here's some context. My ex-mother-in-law doesn't work, doesn't own anything herself, and lives with my ex-sister-in-law. However, she does have significant savings from her inheritance. If she pays the tuition, my ex knows there won't be much left for him when she passes, even though she's still healthy. He's been asking her for years to invest some of that money in his business ideas, but she's always refused. My ex's retaliation was not picking up the kids this weekend. Yesterday, my ex-sister-in-law called me. She doesn't know all the details yet, but apparently my ex's 15-year-old stepson punched him in the mouth. She said she'll let me know exactly what happened once she finds out. And before anyone asks, the new custody agreement will likely take a year to finalize. The court says the overdue payments are the priority and the rest can wait. We have more urgent cases. Update 2. A promise is a promise. As I mentioned earlier, my ex's stepson had an altercation with him because my ex refused to let him go out. Now I have more details. My ex's stepson had plans to go bowling with some friends. His biological father had already given him permission and money for the outing. However, when he told his mother, she said he couldn't go because they needed him to stay home and watch his younger siblings. My ex and his wife had planned an outing and needed someone to stay with the kids. This led to an argument. The boy raised his voice to his mother, and my ex stepped in to demand that he respect her. The boy replied that he wasn't his father. Trying to maintain authority, my ex told him that as long as he lived under his roof, he had to follow his rules. The boy ignored him and turned away. My ex followed him and touched his shoulder to get his attention. At that moment, the boy turned around, punched him, and shouted that he wasn't his father and could never compare to him. The mother scolded him for his behavior, but the boy, still angry, shouted back that he hated her. This version was shared by my ex and his wife to my ex-mother-in-law. My sister-in-law later related to me. They went to see my ex-mother-in-law to try to gain her sympathy and convince her to take care of the kids, the 2 stepchildren and the baby, so they could go out. However, my ex-mother-in-law told them she would not take care of the children. When I spoke to my ex, he mentioned he was dealing with family issues and claimed that the boy's biological father was turning him against him. He didn't give me many details and omitted most of what my sister-in-law had shared. He simply informed me that due to the situation, he wouldn't be able to pick up our children this weekend. The 15-year-old boy is now staying with his biological father. As for what I mentioned earlier, my ex was 2 months behind on child support, and that same week he was supposed to make another payment. He didn't, leaving him 3 months behind. In the end, his mother was the one who covered the overdue amount. Regarding the child who attends the same school as my son, it's not the 15-year-old involved in the altercation. It's his younger stepbrother, who is 8 years old, the same age as my son. I decided to enroll my son in that school when the affair became public. At the time, I was working as a kindergarten teacher at the same school, and the boy had been one of my students. We all knew each other, and to protect my children from rumors, I transferred them to a private school. This happened 2 months before the school year ended. Thanks to the circumstances and the support of some kind people, we managed to get them admitted. Update 3. The day after my post here, my ex was arrested for domestic violence and child abuse. The father of the boy involved filed a complaint. My ex's wife defended him, claiming that her son was a brat and that this wasn't the first time her son had been violent with him or his younger siblings. This left me surprised because, as far as I know, my ex had never mentioned that the teenager had been beaten. My ex-sister-in-law said that her brother, meaning my ex, never brought it up. And I asked my kids if their stepbrother had ever touched them or been violent with them. Both said no. My children are comfortable telling me anything, and their answer was no. My ex and his wife have since changed their story about the incident. Now their version is that the boy misbehaved, my ex tried to talk to him, and the boy hit him first, so the mother hit her son to pull him off my ex. Child protection authorities here are usually very strict when a case interests them or when the harm suffered by the child is severe. I haven't seen the teenager myself. The teenager has been placed in a shelter for abused youth. Edit. When physical abuse of minors is reported, they are transferred to a safe space until a gazelle chamber interview and a forensic medical evaluation are conducted. Once a safe environment is confirmed, they are returned to the parent. Update 4. Hi, I thought long and hard before posting this update because I feel like my initial post and this one don't serve the purpose, as they don't directly involve my children. Here's what happened. It was determined that the 15-year-old boy was indeed assaulted. I don't have all the details about what was said during his interview since, being a minor, that information is protected. From what I understand, my ex-mother-in-law hired a lawyer, and with the mother's statement, my ex was cleared of the violence charges. However, the boy insists on a different version of what happened. In the middle of all this, my ex had an altercation with a police officer when they were separating him from the boy's father, which led to his arrest for a week. In the end, there were no charges for violence or child abuse. On the other hand, the boy's mother is still on maternity leave, and from what I've heard, she was referred to parenting and anger management courses. The boy's father can't take care of him full-time, and the boy said he would go back to his mother if my ex left the house. Apparently that didn't happen, so the boy is currently staying with his paternal grandmother. That's all I know for now. My eldest son knows what happened, but it wasn't through me. I want to clarify that, because people tend to assume a lot here. I don't think I'll update again unless this directly involves my kids, and honestly, I hope it doesn't come to that. For now, my kids' visits to my ex are suspended. While I respect the court's decision, I still have my doubts about how the situation was handled, and I'm shocked at how justice worked in this case. I don't want to speculate, but there are rumors that my ex-mother-in-law paid a lot of money. I can't confirm that, though. Wishing you all happy holidays.